Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Kevin Sheehan, the director of the Revere Public Library, and I started on this job about a year ago, well, in July. And it was about a year ago that I got a call from a publicist about an author with ties to Revere. His name was Maloney, and he was available to speak at the library. But at this time of the year, being a new director, I was swamped. I wasn't able to follow up. And Leo had spoken at a couple of other libraries and had become busy, so unfortunately we missed that opportunity. And I missed the opportunity of seeing him speak at the library of the town where I live, Billerica. But as luck would have it, Leo released a third book, and he offered to come, and once again he offered to come and speak at the library, and I was so grateful for that. One of the things that I was so busy with, and I am so busy with though, is reporting, the library services to the state. And one of the things that the Revere Public Library hasn't done as much as we'd like to is programming for adults. Things such as this, where adults can come and hear authors speak or hear presentations. And so I'm extremely grateful to Leo for remembering Revere, where he's from. And I didn't know more than local ties. He's a native of Revere, and so I'm extremely grateful to that he's come back. There is a survey outside at a table that would help us to file a long-range plan with the state, and it will also help us to gauge our library services, and it would help us to beef up the programming like this. So. Again, I'm very grateful to Leo and Linda and Kensington Publishing for remembering the library and remembering Revere. And without further ado, let's welcome Leo Maloney.
Hi, everyone. First thing I want to do is thank everybody for taking the time out of their day to come up and spend some time with me. As Kevin said, it's been a lot of years since I've been back to Revere. I see some familiar faces. Actually, a very good friend of mine who I grew up with. I haven't seen Tommy in, God, I can't tell you how long. I didn't even recognize him. He recognized me. So, I had given a lot of thought about coming back to Revere. My editor at Kensington Publishing and my publicist at Kensington Publishing had kept asking me, saying, when you do your next book launch, you should do it in Revere, you should do it in Revere. And it took me quite a while to decide to do it. And finally I decided, you know what, I think it's time to go back. So we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to talk about the books. We're going to talk about my journey, how I got here. But before I forget, first of all, I want to thank Kevin Sheehan, the director of the library, for all his hard work. He put a lot of effort in to especially getting this building. It's a really nice venue, and he did a lot of work. I also, earlier there was some things up there where I thanked 50 million people. So I'm not going to thank everybody all over again, but I am going to thank my wife Linda, who's sitting right there. She's the one, I don't know if you've been in the cafeteria, she's the one who put the spread out along with her friend Daniela. The two of them were at my house for the past 2 weeks. It was amazing. I mean, I just sat and watched what they did. And Lynn works very hard at this, and so did Daniela. I also want to recognize my social media guru, because without him, I wouldn't be on social media. His name is Meyer, good guy Meyer, just stick your hand up. He does everything. He does my Twitter account, he does my Facebook accounts, he does my Pinterest accounts, he does accounts, I don't even know how to say them. But he's the one that does it all. And two more people I want to thank. I want to thank Lisa Fries, who's sitting up front here. I met Lisa a year ago. Lisa, when you go inside, you're going to see this beautiful custom cake that was made that looks like the front cover of the book. Lisa had it made in a place in South Boston called, I believe, Sweet Tooth. And I first met Lisa a year ago. She was a fan of mine, and I didn't realize it. And I met her at my last book launch in Stoneham. And she had a cake made to look like the cover of Silent Assassin. And we talked and chatted, and to make a long story short, the next day we talked, and she is now the president of my fan club. And she has we have a legitimate fan club. It's got a website, and she left some information out there. But Lisa's great. Also, I want to just thank another friend of mine who's here, Nancy Schneider. We've been friends for many moons. And Nancy, anytime there's anything to do, Nancy's right there to lend a helping hand. So I made a decision 3 books ago not to ever read my own stuff in public. And there's a reason I don't. And I've talked to many other authors who I've made friends with in the last 3 years, like Lee Child and Meg Gardner and Michelle McPhee and John Gilstrap, and I can go on and on. I met them all. And the reason I decided not to do it is, from the time I start writing till the time the book is published, I read the book minimum 10 times. So what happens with me is, because I've read it so much, if I were to sit here and read you a chapter, which you're going to hear a chapter in a second, I always screw it up because my mind's so far ahead of my eyes that I mess it up. So rather than look like a dope, I decided 3 years ago to hire a professional recording studio who will read they'll read you the chapter, my first chapter of the book. But this time I did something a little different. I made a connection with a company called You Are Business, and they're here, or they were here, or there he is over there. And when I brought him in and listened to the CD, I just thought the voice of the guy that did it, who's done the past 2, was kind of bland. So I said to him, "What do you think?" And he listened to it. He says, "Okay, go away and come back in a few minutes." So you're going to hear things in this other than just the voice. And it's subtle, but you'll hear them. And it really made this whole CD cool. So I'm going to play you the first chapter. It lasts, I don't know, it's probably like 4.5 minutes. But it'll give you an idea of what's going to go on.
Federally administered tribal areas, Pakistan, May 23rd. The Night Stalker Black Hawk flew low over a sea of black that reached up in jagged peaks along the horizon into a leaden sky. Alberto Medina's muscles were tense with anticipation. The aircraft had gone completely dark, and they were keeping radio silent, even here in the middle of nowhere, in the tribal areas of Pakistan. The Pentagon had decided to clear the off with the Pakistani government after all, so they wouldn't have to worry about radar detection and anti-aircraft missiles from their military. But there was still the Martyrs Brigade and Pakistani Taliban to worry about. The countryside was riddled with them here, and they wouldn't think twice about trying to bring down a Black Hawk helicopter if they saw it coming. Since talking over the sound of the helicopter was a non-starter, they sat in silence together, Medina and the rest of the SEAL Team's 6 Gold Squadron. Not that there was anything to say. This was hardly their first time around the block. Medina had lost count of how many operations they had run together in the past 5 years. It had been a whirlwind tour through Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia, whose physical and mental demands left Medina used to living at the edge of his tether. This was different, though. They had taken out countless militants and low-ranking members of terrorist groups. Today, they were going after Hadir Raza, codenamed Faj, for this operation. He was a young man, just over 30, with a strong nose and the intense glare of the true believer. Under his leadership, the Martyrs Brigade had killed untold numbers of civilians in Pakistan, and Raza had, according to intelligence reports, masterminded a series of suicide bombings that had killed dozens in France, England, and Germany. All that was before the bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Islamabad a month before. In the wordless roar in the chopper, Medina's mind wandered to an image of Michelle, her smooth brown skin, her dark eyes, that beautiful long neck made as vivid as if she had been there by the heightened senses that came with the adrenaline rush of the mission. He had promised her that he'd leave after this tour of duty, and that woman deserved to have a man by her side. He had already let her down once, he thought, with a sting of shame. He'd signed on for another 2 years out of duty and camaraderie. The bond of the Navy SEALs was not one easily broken. Medina shook those thoughts out of his head and clutched his HK MP5 as if to anchor him. He focused on the mission, going over in his head a carefully choreographed attack that they had planned in under 24 hours after the intel had come in. He pictured the floor plan of the compound, his positions as they would move in. He remembered the contours of the faces of the people suspected to be in there, one by one, until he formed a picture of Padilla Raza clearly in his mind. If he was lucky, Medina would be the one to gun him down. 5 minutes to target, the pilot said tersely over the radio. Medina felt energy surge through his body, his muscles twitching in anticipation. He changed around into his MP5 and heard the others doing likewise with their weapons. O'Connor knelt by the still-closed door of the chopper, ready to throw out the rope when they reached their target. "Stand by to deploy," said Moody through their communicators. Medina checked his watch, clicking on his built-in light. It was just shy of 3 a.m. He felt it in his stomach as the chopper slowed down its horizontal movement, then began to descend. Shortly thereafter, the aircraft drew to a standstill in the air. Medina slipped on his heavy gloves, flexing his hands to accommodate them to the weather. They had worn him nicely by now and didn't make his movements quite so stiff. It was a small comfort. "Go, go, go!" Sykes opened the door, letting a rush of air into the chopper. They rolled the fast rope off the edge and went over first. Medina pulled his night vision goggles over his eyes, and the interior of the chopper was revealed from the darkness in shades of green. Each member of the 9-man team followed suit. Medina began to climb down last, leaving the standard 10 feet between himself and the man below him. Cool air blasted him as he emerged from the chopper door, holding onto the thick braided rope with his gloved hands and thighs. Faint and irregular lights spread out on the town below, bright green spots in the green landscape. His hands grew hot from the friction with the rope, and his MP5 swung gently against his back for the few seconds he was in the air. And then his heavy boots connected with the hard, dusty ground of the backyard of the complex. His eyes followed the outline of the outer wall that encircled him, familiar to him from satellite and aerial drone pictures. He ran after the rest of the team for cover, where the wall shadowed the moonlight, pulling off his fast rope gloves as he did. King, Sykes, and Hinton, their demolition team, had already run ahead to plant the C4 on the hinges of the back door and of the iron security gate. Medina and the remaining 5 stood by, guns against their shoulders, ready to move in, taking cover against the blast. In a flash and a puff of smoke, the gate came loose and crashed onto the concrete in front of it. 3 men fanned out into the downstairs floor. The demolition team moved on to secure the outside. Medina led the other 3 in a charge upstairs, where they expected they would find Raza. He would have been alerted to the noise by now, but with any luck he wouldn't be able to arm himself faster. "Outside clear," came a voice through the communicator. "Ground floor clear," came another. Strange, thought Medina. The house was supposed to be occupied. The doubt had barely registered in his mind when he kicked open the door to Raza's bedroom. Raza was not there. Instead, there was a young man with a short beard and wild fear in his eyes. He was wearing a shawl-wadded camise, under which Medina recognized the familiar bulk of the suicide bomber. In a split second, too surprised to act, his eyes followed the man's arm to his hand, where he was holding a detonator. Hands trembling, the young man pushed the button. Medina never heard the blast that took out his entire team. His last thought, barely formed, was of Michelle, of that lovely spot where her neck met her hair.
Thank you. That gives you a little bit of an insight. I'm going to give you a real quick synopsis. So in Black Skies, as you heard, a team of Navy SEALs is wiped out during a suicide attack. At the same time, there's also a motorcade of dignitaries, and this is in Afghanistan, that are ambushed, and the U.S. Secretary of State is kidnapped. But this is no ordinary kidnapping. It's a unprecedented happening where somebody from the United States, that high in office, would be kidnapped. And it's up to Dan Morgan, he's the main protagonist in all my books, and Peter Connolly, who's his partner. It's up to them to find out who did this, save the Secretary of State, and save the United States from about what's going to happen, which I'm not going to tell you that. So, you know, the questions are going to be, you know, Dan Morgan's daughter, Alex, for those who've read the first couple of books, she's got a really prevalent role in this. She's come a long way since high school. And, you know, it's going to bring up the heroes and villains of today. And it's going to take you home to really what's going on in the world today. Let me ask you a question first of all. How many here have read any of my books? Termination Orders? Silent Assassin? Okay. So, in Termination Orders and Silent Assassin, as I said, Dan Morgan, who's the main protagonist, Dan Morgan is based on me. I was a deep cover black operative for over 30 years. And when I decided to write these books, I decided to write them as fiction, but based on certain things that took place during my career, or certain things that I know could happen, could really be done. And one of the things my publisher's done is they've allowed me, when I create a story, I can see what's going on right now and create something to make it look plausible. I don't do a lot of things in my books that, I don't have the character do things that I know couldn't be done. I've either done them, could do them, or I know somebody that has done them. So we try to keep it really as realistic as possible. You won't see him doing things like flying into a mountain and the plane blows up and he comes floating down in a white helicopter with a blonde and a brunette. That's never going to happen. And my publishing company agreed with me. They wanted to try to keep it as close to what reality is as possible. So, I'm going to step back now and I'm going to take on a little cruise. I grew up in Revere, and my wife wound up getting some pictures from both my sister, my niece, and we had some. I had some also. Just kind of showing you my progression along the way. Some of them are really funny. One thing before I forget. I get a speaking fee, and I waived my fee for the library for them to be able to do this, and they wanted to use the fundraiser. So they put a couple of jars out there. If you'd like to make a donation, it goes straight to the library. It has nothing to do with me. I don't get a dime of it, nor do I want anything for it. So they're there. There's one outside, and there's one, I believe, in where the food is and the treats are. One other thing before I forget. As of 2 weeks, it's now official. I have a signed deal and partnered with Amber Entertainment, who has studios in both Los Angeles and in London, and we've partnered for them to bring the Dan Morgan thriller series to the big screen. So the first movie is going to be Termination Orders. The screenplay is in the process of being written, and they, from what I'm being told, they expect it to start shooting looking at mid-2015, so hopefully by early summer. So that's a pretty big deal. I never saw that coming, and their plan is to do a franchise of the books. Every time I do a book, they're going to do a movie. So, you know, I've been pretty lucky. I was right place, right time. The woman that owned the company came over from England, went into a Sam's Club. Sam's Club? Yeah, Sam's Club. Saw my book Termination Orders, bought it, and then contacted my agent and said she wanted to meet with me. And that's how it happened. I mean, how lucky can you be? So, all right, so I'm going to start this off. I'm going to hold, if you have something pressing you have to ask me, go ahead. But if not, kind of let me go through this, then we'll do a Q&A and you can ask me anything you want. And I'll answer you if I can. Because there's still certain things that I can't and won't talk about, but there are a lot of other things that I do. Believe it or not, that's me with my sister. And that's me down at Revere Beach. So that had to be around, I'm guessing, I was born in 47, so that was probably 48, 49. My sister passed away about, I guess about 20 years ago now, at least. And she was 4 years older than me, and she passed away, and she died in a fire. Okay, that's my brother. That's me in the middle. What an outfit. My sister, back into then, I was what, probably 6 years old? I was into guns already. Now there's an outfit for you, especially the hat. That's myself, my brother, my sister. I look at that and go, are you kidding me? How could you walk out in public like that? These are all Beachmont. I grew up in Beachmont. I was an altar boy, if you can believe that one. But I was. Again, my sister, my brother, look at the tie. Oh. I obviously had nobody that told me how to dress back then. That's Pleasure Island, Wakefield. Again, my brother and I, and then myself. One of my cover stories was that I was an antique, classic, and custom car broker, which I was really into cars. I've owned many different cars, multiple cars over the years, and that probably got me started right there. That particular cover story allowed me to travel the world without, any problems at all, because I was always making car deals. That was the front anyway. Oh, God. Hey, Rod, I told you I was a Cub Scout. I didn't last very long, but I was a Cub Scout. And that's Revere Beach. That was my yard with my dog. Oh, God. That was, believe it or not, that was a 5th grade prom when I went to the Louis Pasteur School. And that girl, I actually remember her name. Her name was Kathy Moore. She lived on Intercourse. And that was my sister. Okay. That was me down in D.C. That was me and a friend of mine from Intercourse, Bobby Vivalacqua. I don't know where that one came from. It looked like I was in another world. Okay, so I was drafted into the Army in 1966, and while I was in the service, I was recruited by a clandestine government agency. And it was at that point in time, once I went through the process, I went into training and trained to be an operative. And upon completion of training, I had several different things that I could have been. I could have been a field operative. I could have worked at an embassy, assigned to an embassy as a quote-unquote spook. But one of the things they offered me was the opportunity to be a deep cover black operative, which I would come off the grid. But what that really meant was it allowed me, I didn't work directly for the agency. I did, but I didn't. By being a contractor, I could say, yes, I will accept this assignment, or no, I won't accept it. And it gave me much more freedom. And, when I took an assignment early on, it was that I had to feel as though it was best for our country, and that's all that mattered. But then at a later point in time, when I had my daughter, I have one daughter, and when I had her, then it became what was in the best interest for her future, and then the country. So I came off the grid. As I said, I had numerous cover businesses. I owned the classic car business. I own a company called Automania Antique Custom Car Shows, which is, if anybody have ever heard of World of Wheels, or if you've gone to the new car shows, same thing, except all mine were classic and custom and street rods and that type of thing. Real businesses that I turned into real businesses. I owned a limousine company. I owned a private detective agency. I'm still a licensed PI in Massachusetts. Oh God, what else? A few other things here and there. And that wasn't those were only the make-believe jobs. Okay, this is when I was a cop in Revere. That was, Jesus, I'm guessing that was in 76. Let me explain about being a cop. I had always wanted to be a cop. And when I decided to become one, the agency wasn't exactly thrilled with me. They didn't want me to, but they couldn't stop me. They felt as though that I'd be out there too much, but it wasn't. It wasn't a problem, because the name I used when I was an operative was not Leo Maloney. My first name I always used, and we did use that purposely, because if you're in a crowd and someone says Leo and your eyelashes move and the enemy spots it, you're a dead man. So you always use your first name. So that was in the, I guess, mid 70s. God, I look different. Okay, now this was and Tommy, you remember that. There was an auto body shop, and there was this competition at Boston College. It was kind of a, it was a track and field deal, and there were people from all over the state in Massachusetts, and this other kid, what's Billy's last name? That's from Winthrop, I can't think of his name, but the kid next to me is Billy O'Connell, and myself, and they sponsored us, and we competed in this, it was like an Olympic type thing, and we did pretty good. Him and I both finished very high up in the competition. That's just like a mugshot. That was some random mugshot I had taken somewhere. Huh? Billy did? Oh, I didn't know that. How long ago? Really? Oh. Okay, that's me with my 1934 custom-built Ford limousine. It was the only one of its kind in existence. That's one of the cars that I used in my antique classic as a broker, and I actually had that car built, and I sold it to a Saudi Arabian sheikh who bought it for his daughter. And that car, when I built it, it was actually, at one point in time, it was down in Florida, and I was at an event, and a guy come in, looked like a typical Saudi, and he was with this monster, and he come up and he wanted to buy my car. So I just kind of looked at it and says, go away, you couldn't afford this. Of course, I knew he could. So he says, how much do you want for it? So I gave him an outrageous figure. And he said, I want it, I'll be back. I figured it was nothing, just a fruitcake. So he left. About an hour he comes back, he comes find me, and he's with the guy and he's got a briefcase. He says, I want your car. I said, show me the money. He opened his briefcase, he had stacks and stacks and stacks of hundreds. And I sold them like, you know, it went back then, it was well over 100,000. And that was back in the early, mid-80s. And I let it go, and it's maybe still there. I don't know. Okay, when I owned the company, I told you one of my other cover stories was Automania. This was a car show, antique, classic, custom car show, and we would bring celebrities in. So those are some of the celebrities. You can see that's me with them. Lou Albano from WWE Wrestling, Boss Hogg from the Dukes of Hazzard, Patrick Duffy from Dallas, Jimmy Lee Holt from General Hospital. Steve Bond is his actual name. He played the character of Jimmy Lee Holt from General Hospital. That was my daughter and I in the early 80s at Lady Lodge in Beachmont. That was me just before I was preparing for a mission, before I was going on a mission. That was one of the few pictures I ever let be taken of me at that time period. Okay. I also was lucky enough back in 2009 to meet up with a man and a woman named John Depew and Judy Coleman. Judy sitting in the back of the room, who owns a company called Wild Beagle Productions, a movie company based here in Massachusetts. And initially, I went up to talk to them about consulting on their film for police techniques. I wound up getting off on a role, and I got a role as Captain Flynn, Chief of Detectives of the Boston Police Department. And I actually had a role in the movie, speaking role, where I spoke more than once. There were several good scenes, and that was the picture that they did with the promo. And that was at the red carpet event when it premiered in Medford at the Regent Theater, Judy? Arlington, Regent Theater in Arlington. And it was a red carpet event just as you would go to at a Hollywood event. It was a huge, huge event. This is, I go to many conferences all over the country. I've been to BoucherCon in Cleveland, Thriller Fest in New York, which I've been to 5 times. I've been to Left Coast Crime out in Colorado. I've been to Nashville twice. I've been to New Orleans. I do a lot of traveling. This one was taken. That lady on the left is my editor. She's also the editor-in-chief at Kensington. She's the third from the top. She's the one that discovered me. And literally, it was weird. I'm going to step back. Part of one of the other stories, cover stories we catered, it wasn't a cover story, we actually did this. When I decided to write a book, when I finally gave in, after my wife talking to me for years, write a book, write a book, write a book, no, 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 no. Finally, I decided to write it. So I knew nothing about writing. So I decided to go to an event in New York called Thriller Fest, and the point of going to Thriller Fest was to get an agent, because in the real world you need an agent. An agent can do things for you and negotiate for you, and I'm very good at negotiating, but not something I don't know about. So I went to this event, and when I went to the event, you got to have 5 minutes. There were 45 agents in the room, and you went up to a table and you get to go up and speak to them. So I had picked, I believe, 5 that I thought would be a good fit for myself. So I went in, and my goal was to get them to take me on as a client because my book was really good, not because I was an operative. I didn't want that to be the reason. So when I went up to the first agent, I started off something like this: "Hi, my name's Leo J. Maloney. I wrote a book called Termination Orders." And he didn't even have the courtesy to look up. He just waved me away. Not a good thing to do to me. That's really not smart. But I walked away. I get in line now for the second one, and each time, and you get 5 minutes with each person you want to be, and then they'll wave you off. So I had to go get in line, the end of the line, and there was a lot of people. There was probably, oh God, I can't even tell you, maybe 1,000 people during the lines. So I get in line again, and I get in. I get up to this guy. I say the exact same thing. He at least had the courtesy to look me in the eye and tell me to get lost. Okay, so I stepped out of line, and I was really, really perturbed. I said, you know what, screw this. I got in line again, got in the third, it was a woman agent. And I walked up, and I said, "Hi, my name's Leo J. Maloney, and I'm the author of a book called Termination Orders, which is written as fiction, but based on my life as a black operative." Bingo. She just looked right up, looked at me, and said, "Continue." And then you have this pitch, which I threw about the book. So she recognized my accent, and as it turned out, she originates from Belmont. So in the middle of this, you got 5 minutes, and there's people up the yin-yang there, and she says to me, "So what's going on with the Hilltop? Is that still open?" And she starts asking about all these restaurants. She's asking me about, the sub shop that was on Park Ave, but they moved to Winthrop. What is it? Rossetti's. She's asking me about Rossetti's. She's asking me about Kelly's Roast Beef. I'm saying to myself, for Christ's sake, stop with the food and talk to me. So the bell rings, but she goes like this. She just takes a hand and she goes to the next one. She says, "He'll be here a while." She continued to talk to me. So we talked, and she says, she says, "Who else are you going to go see?" So I said, this. She says, "No, forget those bozos." And she says, "Go and see these 2 agents." She says, "But promise me the first right of refusal before you make a book deal." So I said, "Okay." So I go over and I talk to these other agents, and then, but I really liked her, so she asked me to send her the entire manuscript, which I did. And her and I were probably talking like at least once a week, and this went on for a while. And all of a sudden one day, I wanted to ask her something, and I called her. Didn't return my call. Didn't recall me the next day. Didn't return my emails. She just kind of went on. Finally, I said, "Geez, maybe I did something to piss her off." So I sent her a letter, a certified letter, and I said, "Donna, if I have done something to offend you or insult you, I apologize, but you need to tell me that because I don't know what's wrong. You wanted me, now you know where to be found." She never responded to that. So I got really irritated. I said, "You know what? I don't need this crap." So I decided to open my own publishing company. And the reason I knew how to do that, because it was just another cover story. So I did. I opened a company called Independent Publishing House. My wife created a really nice logo. She created an unbelievable website. She's very good with websites. Linda's made, between websites and business cards that she's made for me, she should be a millionaire if I had to pay for them. But that's a nice thing. I don't have to pay for them. So she created this website, Independent Publishing House. Then through connections that I had, I got a Fifth Avenue, New York City address on Fifth Avenue for my mailing address. Then I got a Fifth Avenue telephone number, which made this company all the more legit. Then I had Lynn do this voiceover for the answering machine with an English accent, saying you have reached the corporate offices of blah, blah, blah. We're busy with another client. please leave your number, we'll call you back, which obviously rang back to us and we would call back. So we created that whole story. And then what I did was I surrounded myself with, I knew nothing about publishing, and I knew nothing about self-publishing. But I surrounded myself, I did some research, and I found a guy that lived in Melrose who worked both as a mainstream publishing side and as a self-publisher. So we worked with Amazon and all those names that I don't even remember the name of them, but it has to do with self-publishing. And then I hired a graphic designer to do the front cover of my original book. Then I found a guy down in Pembroke who had connections with a printing company in Canada. And it turned out that I could get a much better deal printing these books in Canada than I could in the States. So I wound up making a deal with them. So, make a long story short, we did all this, did everything there was to be done. I also hired a ghostwriter, and he was a graduate of Yale, and I had contacted Yale, and he and I talked, and he came over to my house, and he's kind of a shy guy, very shy, very timid, but smart as hell. He sat down at my table, and I said, I'd like to have you help me writing because I have no experience. He was also the editor of the Yale newspaper when he was in college. So I said to him, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you some stories, and when I tell you the stories, you tell me if you think you'd be able to do this. So I started telling stories, and his hands, he started trembling and started sweating. I mean, the kid, he was like, I could see he was freaking out. I said, don't worry, you're safe. Nothing's going to happen to you, We talked, and then he come back. We talked 3 times. Finally, we made a deal, and he became a ghostwriter. And so then we got the books out, and I went to a local Walgreen, and I went to the local Walgreen in Stoneham, and I asked the manager if he would. I said I was local off. I had a book. Would he take it on consignment? And he said, let me read it. I let him read it. Called me the next day, told me he was going to put it in his store, several other stores, and put me in touch with the main place, I think it's in Minnesota somewhere, I forget. And they put it in other venues throughout the country. I then went to numerous independent bookstores and got it in them as well. I just talked my way in, and I used all my background and everything I've ever learned to be able to do this, and it worked. So I got it in multiple stores. So and it was doing pretty well. So here's how I'm getting to this. Michaela, my editor, was on vacation down to Cape Cod, and she went into a bookstore in Cape Cod and saw the book, bought it, and read it. And she really liked the book. So before I get to her, just before this. The weekend before, I was over a friend's house, Bobby DePasquale, and I was telling him, he had no idea. I've been friends with him since I was a kid. He had no idea I did these things, and I told him, and he's just looking at it, and I said, and I wrote a book. Get out of it. Now his wife's sitting there, and his wife is just the type of wife. No matter what you say, she's going to have a smart remark. She's always been that way. I've known her since I was a kid. So she's just shooting her mouth off. So I leave. I tell them about the book down the Cape, about the various places, but a specific name down the Cape that it was in. So Monday morning, August 11th at 11 a.m., and I remember this because this was a big deal in my life, my phone rings. I pick up the phone and went, hello? Now, Bobby's wife has a very unique voice. She kind of sounds like the good witch in the original Wizard of Oz, the little blonde, the nice one. And so the little voice on the other end goes, hello, Leo? And I went, yes, it is. She goes, this is Michaela Hamilton from Kensington Publishing in New York. And immediately I says, this is Debbie busting my chops. So I said, all right, we'll play a game. So she says, I says, hi. She goes, listen, she says, I was down Cape on vacation, and I went into the bookstore, and she'd mentioned the bookstore. And she said, and I saw your book, and I bought it, and I couldn't put it down. I read it from start to finish. She said, then when I went from back on vacation, I brought it into my publisher and the owner of Kensington, and they both read it. And I went, really? I said, so you saw my book down the Cape? She said, yeah. I said, okay. She says, well, what I'd like to know is, would you consider coming to New York and talking to us about a book deal? And I went, really? And this is how I'm talking to her. And she goes, yeah. I says, when would you like me to come? She says, well, when would you like to come? I said, how about tomorrow morning? And she goes, okay. How would you get here? I said, well, I'd probably take the train from Boston South Station and go to Penn Station. She goes, okay. Let me know once you've made your plans, and we will. I will meet you. I'll tell you where to go. I'll meet you for breakfast, and we'll talk. I said, really? You're going to do this for me? And I'm really being kind of snide. So she's, I says, and then she said, yeah, so when will you let me know? All right, I'm going to have to change the way what I said to her. What I said to her was, F you, Debbie, but I didn't say F you. And I hung up the phone. Hang up the phone. About a minute later, the phone rings. But this time, the genius that I am, I looked at the caller ID, and guess what it said? Kensington Publishing, New York. I went, oh, crap. So I needed time to think, so I didn't pick it up. I didn't hit the on button. So I sat there, and I'm thinking, and I'm thinking, and I'm thinking, I'm going, what the hell am I going to talk my way out of this? So the phone rings again, and this time I look at it, and it's Kensington Publishing. So I hit the on button, I went, hello? She says, hello, Leo? I said, yes. She goes, this is Michael Hamilton from Kensington Publishing in New York. I says, oh, hi. I says, Miss Hamilton, if you will give me 1 minute, I'm going to explain to you what just happened. So she says, okay. So I explained it to her, and she started laughing. And she says, I understand. She says, but I got to tell you, I've been in this business for about 25 years, and this is the first time I ever called a potential author up to offer him a deal who told me to go F myself before he saw the offer. And her and I immediately, so Lynn and I did go down a couple of days later, went to breakfast with her. She spent a lot of time with us, never even really talked about the book, talked about us, my family, just us in general, took me over to Kensington, whose offices are in Times Square, took us into the building, signed in, we go upstairs and we get off the elevator. They've got this really, nice reception area. And there was a girl behind the reception. Now this is how Michael Hamilton introduces me. She says, whatever the girl, and I don't remember what the girl's name was. She goes, this is our newest and rising star, Leo Maloney. And I just looked at Lynn and I went, are we being punked? And that's how, then she took me in and introduced me to the publisher who spent a half hour with me, took me into the owner who spent a half hour with me, sat down, and she offered me a 2-book deal. And that's how it all began. And that was 3 years ago. She is a sweetheart. Her and I have become, as Lynn will tell you, we've become friends. She's not just my boss. I can call, I have her home number, her cell phone number. If I have questions, anything, I can call her. She's just for some reason or another, she's taken a liking to me and really been great with me, guiding me in this process. Because this process, for someone that hasn't been educated in it, and as a writer, it's been a difficult process. I also was, so that's Michael. And she's the sweetest, she's just one of a kind. I am so lucky. And then these authors, and that's Jonathan, and every one of them, except the one holding termination orders, is a New York Times best-selling author. So John Green, John Lutz, John Gilstrap, they're all multiple-time best-selling authors, myself and Daniel Palmer. Daniel Palmer is, and they're all Kensington authors. His father was Mike Palmer, who was not only a New York Times best-selling author, he had many movies made from his books. And John Gilstrap, who's to my right, he's kind of taken me under his wing during this whole process and has really guided me throughout the whole author process, what to wear for clothes, what to do, how to go in a bar and make believe. I don't drink, so I go in a bar and make believe I'm drinking. I have water, it looks like vodka, because that's where all the business is done. All your author business, that's where I've met Lee Childs. I mean, all these big-time authors that I met you meet them at these conferences, and they're all in a bar. So you got to go sit there. He's been great. John has been great. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you one quick story about that. We're in, I was in Colorado at Left Coast Crime, and I was sitting with Mark Sullivan, John Gilstrap. Oh God, there were 5. I made the 6th, and they were all New York Times best-selling authors. So the first night we were in this, and they sat. They had this spot. It was kind of a nice area, and it was a round table, and they were all drinking, and I got my glass of water, and the waitress was looking at me like I'm a little weird. And people are coming in that first night and walking up to all these authors and asking them for their autograph. And I'm just sitting there like a dummy. Nobody's asking me for anything. They don't want to know me. Second night, same thing. Well, the third day is when I have a presentation that I do that I'm not going to do here, but if you get a chance, go to my website. If you get a chance to come see me do it, I think you'll enjoy it. It's called An Inside Look at the Life of a Deep Cover Black Operative. And I take you from the day I was recruited all the way till I was retired. And it's really informative. It's a lot of good stuff in there. But I gave that presentation, and I gave it in front of a rather large room. That night, we're sitting in the same look. We'd gone to dinner. They go back, and they would stay in the bar. I didn't stay past usually 11. They'd be there till 3 in the morning, shutting the joint down. But they're going in there, and that night, the usual stuff. People are walking in, but people are walking in and going, "Excuse me, aren't you the black op? Are you Mr. Maloney? Can we have your autograph?" And this is going on. And these guys are just Mark Sullivan and Gil. They're just letting them go, "What are we, dead meat? Who the hell are you now all of a sudden?" So it was kind of cool. And Lynn can tell you, Lynn was with me when I first met John Lutz and several other authors. And these people, these authors who best-selling authors who I thought would never even say hello to me, we were at Thriller Fest and upstairs, and Michael introduced me to several of them. And each one of them generally talked to me, asked me stuff about me. And all of a sudden I looked at my wife and I said, "I just became a member of the Boys Club. And these guys treat you." I've gone Lee Child, he's blurbing my next book, which comes out March, 12 Hours. He's given me a front cover blurb for it. Meg Gardner has, Mark Sullivan has, Michelle McPhee has, John Gilstrap has. And all I really had to do was walk up to them, because they know who you are now, and say, "Would you consider blurbing my next book?" And every single one of them said yes to me. No one said no so far. So it's been a pretty cool journey with these people. They're really nice people. Okay, so there's what I was telling you about Amber Entertainment. They're a really good company. I am so excited about this. I mean, never in my wildest dream. This was going to be a one and done. I was going to write termination on this, and that was going to be the end of it. Never thought I'd write 2 books. Never thought after that, really didn't think about 3, but I've done 3. Finished my 4th, and I just came up with a great plot line for my next book, which I told my editor yesterday. So as it stands right now, it looks like she's talked to me about a 9-book deal, and that's what it looks like it's going to be. And they're also talking to me about doing another series in addition to this, and they want it to be a cop private investigator series, which, seeing I have the background, I'm probably going to do it and start a whole other series. So it's, but the movie, that's, just, we know what they're going to do when they're ready to start shooting. They're going to bring Lynn and I over. They're going to put us up in a hotel or a house for the entire time they're shooting. I'm going to be on set every day. It's going to be an unbelievable experience. They've talked to me about who may play Dan Morgan. Anybody here watch Homeland? Okay, the redheaded guy, he's an English guy, and I can't think of his real name. Damian Lewis. That's one they're considering. The second one is, did any of you ever watch the TV show The Unit? It was on CBS for a number of years. Well, the guy in The Unit who was married to the girl who was messing around with the colonel, he's a sergeant. He's kind of a dark brown, reddish hair. Max Martini's his real name. That's the other person they're considering. They asked me my opinion. I gave my opinion. Doesn't mean they're going to listen to my opinion, but the fact that they're going to have me on set, and they're paying me to be on set, aside from the other contract for the book, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, it's kind of, it's taken on a life of its own. Now, for those of you who read Termination Oz, that's the famous Nika. Nika is our dog. I decided to put her in the first book. In the second book, I was going to kill her off, as I was my wife. Jenny was going to die, and Nika were going to die. And there was a reason for that, because I was already into my third book, and there was something that I was going to do with get involved with an MI5 agent from England. But I had quite a bit of this done, and when I sent it down to Michaela, I got a phone call like, no, you can't do that. You can't ever kill Jenny. You can't ever kill the dog. If you kill Jenny and the dog, people will hate you. You can't harm a dog. I said, okay. There was a purpose. She was going to die a hero, but she's alive and well. And then she said, you not only can you not kill off Jenny in your second book, Silent Assassin, you, Dan Morgan, has to save her in a dramatic way. And I did. If for those of you who read it, you know that I did. The moral of the story is Jenny's based on my wife. Loosely, but based on my wife. Jenny's always going to be around, and so is Nika. So that's kind of my journey from where I started, taking you all as I was growing up, getting in, to where I am now. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's so many other things I could tell you, but it would take up so much time, and the presentations really want to hear things that I can tell you a lot of things about my writing. When I write, I don't have any schedule. I was just sitting downstairs yesterday. Lynn was up baking stuff for this, or making, or cutting fruit, or whatever. I lost track of all the stuff. And I was sitting down there, and all of a sudden I had something come into my head, and I started thinking, I said, this is going to be a great plot. So I went upstairs and I asked Lynn her opinion, and Lynn's a very nice person. She doesn't have a sick mind. She doesn't think like I do. And she gave me her opinion. I said, nah. So I went down and I called my editor, and I said, Michael, I'm thinking what the main plot line is going to be from the next book. Let me tell you a quick synopsis, and I did. And she thought it was great. She said, go with it, run with it. So I just, sometimes I'll be in bed, sometimes I get up in the middle of the night and I start writing ideas. There's no set process. I've been very, very lucky. I've never had writer's block. I've never got to a point where I couldn't figure something out, thank God, because I hear that's a nightmare when people have writer's block. I also have my ghostwriter, Kyle, is still with me, and the first book, although the story's mine, the whole storyline was mine, I'm guessing he wrote about 80% of the book, and with my ideas. The second book, it was much lower. Third book, it was probably close to 50-50. The fourth book, it's 80-20 in my favor. But with that being said, I would never, him and I have an agreement and a contract, and as long as I'm doing this, I will keep him with me. I'm never going to cut him loose. As a matter of fact, as part of the movie deal, Eileen Mazzell, who's one of the principal owners in Amber, asked me if I wanted to write the screenplay, and I have no desire to write screenplay. They're entirely different than writing a book. So I said no. So as it turns out, she asked me to ask Kyle if he would be interested in writing the screenplay, which he said yes, which is a tremendous opportunity for him. This could be a huge thing for him. And the other part was, I have an agent, I have a New York agent, and I have a separate contract with Kyle. He will be with me as long as he wants to be. I will never cut him loose. And I didn't have to do this, but I decided to do it. I cut him in on the movie deal as well. So he's going to get a percentage of the movie. You know, one of the things I'm very loyal, and there was a guy that, you know, that went through everything with me since we were signed by Kensington. I was signed by Kensington, and he's a good guy, and we're friends. Again, we're friends. He's not just somebody that works for me. He's a good friend. So, you know, the writing, it's just, you know, I don't have a set schedule. I do it when I do it, and I've always got deadlines, and you know I know I have to meet the deadlines, and I do, and you know, that's been the process, which has been it's been a fun process. I've learned an awful lot, a lot more than I ever thought I would. And the thing I think the most is especially not now, but the first book, when I thought I was done, man, I just began, because the process, it's rewrites and edits and rewrite, and my edit is very good. She doesn't really mess with stuff that I say, because she understands that I understand the way it's really should be and is, but there was still always, you know, this little thing, and but it's a long process. So from the time I start writing till the time the book comes out, the first time it was basically 3 years. The second time it was, I'd say 9 to 10 months. This past one was probably 8 months, and then the one I wrote for March was probably 6 months. But that's a novella, so it's a little shorter. Great storyline, and you know, that's just how the process goes. And the other thing that I found is, you know, I tell people this all the time, especially aspiring young writers. If you want to write, and you think that you've got some substance to what you're writing, and someone tells you, nah, no, you can't do it, or you get denied, you know what, go for it. Even if you have to self-publish, maybe you'll get lucky. You know what, I know how lucky I've met authors along the way that have been working at this for 5, 10, some 15 years, and they've never been published. In 3 years, I'm into my 5th book. That's unheard of, and that's strictly luck. Doesn't make me anything but damn lucky, the same as the movie. Just right place, right time, right person saw it, and I was the beneficiary of that. So, I guess we'll go to a Q&A. You can ask me anything you want about any of the book. Anything you want to ask me about, you can ask me. If I say I can't answer it, depending on what you ask, then that means I can't. So, and I say this because sometimes people will push it. You can push all you want. If I say no, the answer is no, I'm not going to answer you. So, we'll open it up. Yes?
Where will they be filming the movie?
Europe. That I know for sure. They haven't settled on the country. What the process is, the screenplay should be done around January, no later than January, possibly early January. Once that's done, they hire the, I just went blank. They hire the director. Once the director's hired, then they will start auditions. Once the auditions are in place, and they have them already, that's when they'll start shooting. So they'll bring us over and we'll go. I was told it could be anywhere from 2 months to 6 months. It just depends on how fast the process is, to weather, all the variables. Yep.
Will Nika be in the movie?
Pardon me?
Will Nika be in the movie?
Oh yeah. Not this Nika. No, but there will be a Nika. She has to be in the movie. She's, you know, especially in Termination Orders. She had a huge part in Termination Orders. So, what? She can audition?
They do different animals for close-ups and ways.
Yeah, maybe they'll do something like that. I don't know. I let them worry about that. I just, whatever they tell me to do, I'll do, and not be too worried about it. Yeah.
Who would you choose to play yourself in the movie if you could?
Well, I like the 2 people I mentioned earlier. I like them both. See, here's my thing, and I said this from day one. I don't want a Matt Damon. Not that I don't like Matt Damon. I don't want anybody that's associated with another movie like he is with The Bourne Identity, or Daniel Craig with James Bond, or Cruise, or I really like The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, but I want somebody that's known, but on the border of really becoming big, and hopefully this franchise will make him huge. That's what I'd like. You know, I wouldn't mind if it was an unknown. you know, rather than somebody that, I just don't want to be connected to, now, I don't mind if my movies make the money they make, you know, but I just don't want it to be someone connected with somebody else. It wouldn't work. And they agree with me on that. Anyone else? Yes.
So I have a question about, you were a cop in real life, and did you go on missions while you were a cop? And how do you balance, I mean, I can see the classic car thing, is you would be self-directed as a cop. How do you get away with it? That's what you can't answer. Okay.
I did it. I'll tell you I did it, but I'm not going to talk about how. And that's one of the reasons I didn't stay a cop too long. It got to the point where it was very difficult. Because when I was on a mission, I could be gone 3 weeks. I could be gone 18 months, depending on the mission. So it became, I got it out of my system anyway. I mean, I just thought I always want to be one that, doing what I did, then doing that, and I got out of my system.
How long were you a cop? How many years?
Six and a half, somewhere in there, somewhere in there. But I was, I phrase this. I'm not going to, okay, go ahead.
Okay, and while you were a cop, you were the black operative also? Yeah, that's what you were. Okay, all right. Yeah, awesome.
The reason I could do that is because I was a contractor. And if I didn't want to take a mission, I could say no. But with that being said, there were some missions that I absolutely did that I wanted to. So, and let me see. Let me just think of something. I may be able to answer that question, but I got to think of something. Yeah, no statute of limitations. That's long gone. I was able to manipulate things, which allowed me to be able to take a mission. That's all I'm going to say about it. Yes?
Was your daughter born during this time?
My daughter was born in 1979, and so she was, she was very young. And when I was home, I spent a lot of time with her, but there was a lot of times I wasn't around. So, and nobody knew. Nobody in my family, nobody knew until I'll tell the story because some of you have heard it and some of you haven't, but those had. So here's the deal. I grew up in Revere. I grew up in Beachmont. I grew up with the Angulos. Bernadetta Angulo went to high school with me, and I knew her well. So I knew the ins and outs of what their business was. So in 1999, I was about ready to get out. I had so many injuries, and I knew it was time to, for me to stop playing hero. So one day my mother and father come over to my apartment, my condo I was living in, and I decided I was going to tell them. So I said to them, I want to tell you something. So I said directly first to my mother, I said, what do you think I do for a living? And she goes to me, my mother, there's no gray areas. It's black and white. And she says exactly what she's thinking. So she looks at me and goes, well, I can tell you what you're not. You're not a cop. No cop has the kind of money you have and has the cars you have and changes apartments every week and has furniture and I said, so what do you think I do? And she says to me, I think you're an arm breaker for the Angulos. And I looked at her. Now, you know me well enough. I was never in trouble. My brother, it's a different story. but I never was. So I said, why would you think that? And she says to me, you remember on Endicott Ave, the hill that went up, cut through the Mary T? Well, I got in a fight with Bobby Blaze, this kid. My mother was pregnant with my sister, who's 18 years younger than me. And there were these group of kids going up over the hill, and they were swearing, and F this and F that at my mother. And one of them she told them to shut their dirty mouths, and one of them threw a rock at her. I happened to be home. And I come out of the house up over the hill, got this kid, and there was kind of a cliffy edge down from the top to the bottom where this other house was, and we get into it, and I threw him off the cliff, then I went down and I put him through they had a storm door. I put him through the storm door, began to beat the living crap out of him, to the point where I lost it, and my mother had come over, unbeknownst to me, because this was like, wow, she had a rock. She was about to split me open because she thought I was going to kill him. And just then my father happened to come in and walked in and saw her, and he grabbed her. So, and then she says, and I've also seen some of the other fights you've been in. And she says, do you remember when you went through the window down at Wilson's drugstore? And I said, yeah. So she's got, this is what she thinks of me. She thinks I'm an arm breaker. So I looked at my dad and I said, and what do you think I do? He goes, Leo, it doesn't matter what you've done, what you do, you've never gotten in trouble, you've always been a good son, it really doesn't matter. I said, but what do you think I do? He looks at me straight in the eye and says to me, I think you're a drug dealer. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I never have, I've never done drugs. I mean, now my brother on the other hand, it's a different story. Everything I haven't, he has. So I looked at my father and I go, what the hell are you talking? I said, why would you think that? He goes, well, for a lot of the same reason your mother said. You change cars like I change underwear. You change apartments. You're gone. You have money. He says, do you remember, he says to me, do you remember about 3 years ago we came over to the condo? And I said, yeah. He says, do you remember what happened? As soon as he said it, I said, I remember what happened. They came over to visit me. And I had just come home from an assignment. And sitting at the table, I had a briefcase with over 100 cheese in it, cash. And my mother was fiddling and knocked it over and opened up, and the money went off. And she looked at me, and they looked at me, what'd you get? I says, oh, I won that playing blackjack and vases. My father looks at me, you also don't play cards either. So I started laughing. I said, all right. So I said, so this is what I did. I said, do you remember back when I was in the service and I just showed up one day? And they looked at me and my father said, yeah. I said, well, I was recruited to work as a deep cover black operative for a clandestine government agency. My mother looks at me like, what the hell is that? And my father looks at me and he goes, wait a minute. This makes sense. That's how you got out of the service. I said, yeah. He says, that's where you disappear to. That's when you, I said, yeah. And my mother says, what is that? What does he do? I said, I sell cars. It doesn't matter. I didn't want to talk about it. So that's how my parents found out. And then it wasn't until 2001 when I married Lynn. Lynn was my second marriage, and when we got married, I felt as though I had to tell her, and I did tell her, and basically you said, I don't want you doing that. And I didn't go into a lot of details about what I did. So it was that point in time when I told her, then told other members of my family. I actually retired shortly after we got back together. And then I told other family members, friends, and that's when it kind of all started, you should do this, you should do that, you should sell, so that's how everybody found out. And then nobody in the rest of the normal world knew until my book started coming out. And I've heard from people that I haven't heard from in many years who say, oh my God, you're a black op? Oh my God, you're an author? I didn't even know you know how to read. I mean, some of the things people say are funny. And I've gotten to, see and meet people and the reactions when they found out. There was another example. I was involved in girls basketball, and there was this guy that him and I didn't get along. He had no idea. But one day he raised his hands to me, and I said to him in front of about 500 people, if you do that, your wife's going to be going to a funeral, so I suggest you don't do it. He backed off. When termination orders come out, through another person that's a good friend of mine but knows him, he called him and says, oh my God, he could have killed me, couldn't he? He says, yeah, he could have. So you get different reactions from different people. So yeah, what else? Anything else? Yes. Yes.
Is there an instance when either your background in Revere, you kind of touched on this a little bit, I guess, but your background in Revere, your education helped you as either a black op or as an author?
No. Honestly, no. Had nothing to do with it. Yes. Oh, wait, excuse me, 1 minute. He had his hand up.
Okay, your stories about coming out to your parents sounds like another storyline for maybe another book. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, that would, again, you know what? I usually will talk about it when I do events and I travel the country. People reacted the way you get. They get a good laugh out of it. I mean, I didn't think it was too funny. I mean, I'm saying, Jesus, you two think a lot of me. I mean, one thinks I'm a drug dealer, the other thinks I'm an arm-breaker. And I was literally never in trouble in my life. So, but yes, so, yeah.
Well, my other question was going back to writing your books, and maybe you covered this earlier. Obviously, there's a lot of things that you said you can't tell. But now you're telling stories that are based on your real-life experiences. How much vetting did you have to go through with the government in terms of getting these
I
books
didn't,
published?
because I wrote in this fiction. As soon as you write written this fiction, you don't have to be vetted. And that's what it is.
And I would never, and truthfully, I would never, anything that I say, and there are certain things in, especially in the first book, that are true. The second book, there's a little bit true. And each book, there's maybe something that's true, but I would never, nobody ever had to tell me, to vet me and say to me, you can't say this. I spent 30 years over, taking care of my country, fighting for my country. I wouldn't say anything that's going to hurt it in any way, shape, or form. So, but with that being said, I decided to write it as fiction based on my, but by doing that, you don't have to be vetted. Because what I did want to do at the end of the first book, after 3 years, is them going, zit, zit, zit. Because I would have probably said, screw this, and not continue. Someone else had a hand up over here. Anybody? Somebody had a hand up over here. Okay, you had another question. You did, okay.
So I was wondering, what do you think it was about yourself that you were recruited?
Okay, well, I can tell you that.
I thought maybe it was a beach on street smart or something.
No, I actually, I talk about that in my presentation. There are 7 things they look for, and I'll give everybody a good laugh. So the first thing they look for is above average intelligence. And I have still yet to figure out how I got by that one. But I did. There's actually 7 things they look for, and I fit the profile on all 7 things. There's a profile, they profile you, and that's all. But that's, if you ever get a chance to come to the presentation, I really go into all that stuff in depth, and it's pretty interesting. Yes?
Yeah, so some of the stuff that you write, I have to read, and not read.
And not what?
Not read. It's so fast action. So when you write scenes like that, or think them through, do you have to slow everything down, and is there a lot of technical detail that you have to fix later on, or does it just really come out that way?
Yes and no. Sometimes I do. I try, when I write, I try to write, look, when we're in the field, that's one of the things that Michael and I talked about from day one. I can't be talking about fairies and bluebirds and the stuff. That isn't what you talk like out in the field. There's a certain way you conduct yourself, certain way, especially if you're working with other guys. You say things a certain way. Now, with that being said, when I even in the first draft, I didn't swear just to swear, but there are times when you have to swear and you have to say it like it is. And Michael had just said to me, when you reread this, just be careful. Remember, out in the Midwest, at Walmart's, when some little old lady walks in and sees you shooting off the F-bomb or MFer, she's going to stroke and go over and tell the manager. So what I've done is I still say certain things. There's certain words I don't use, but I still do, but I try to make it, it has to be there. There's no other way. You, like in termination orders, when I'm being tortured at my training, what was I going to say to this guy? Please don't do that, you're hurting me. I mean, you know, so you know, I try to, I want it to be realistic. Everything I do, I want it to be realistic. I want you to feel as though, you know, I want you to like Morgan, first of all, because if you like Morgan, you're going to like the books. I want you to have a vested interest in this. And, you know, Morgan and Peter Conley was a real person. He was my partner. That wasn't his name, but he was my partner. So when I write stuff, I want you to feel it. I want you to be there. I want you, like, you'll see that I do a lot of descriptions of rooms and smell. I want you to smell the smells that I smell. I want you to see, I want you to be there. I want to take you and put you there and feel like at the pig roast in termination orders. I want you to feel that stuff. So, and because I've lived it, it makes it easy. Another quick story, and then we're going to stop because we have to go out so you guys can get books and I can sign them and blah, blah, blah. I'll take pictures, whatever you want. So, here's during a radio interview. This is one of the things, I've asked this a lot, but this is particular. Someone, it was a Chicago radio station, and he said to me, what's the difference between you, Vince Flynn, Clancy, and Brad Thor? What's the difference? And I sat for a minute, and I thought, and then I said, well, there's a couple. They're already best-selling authors, which they are. They're all multi-millionaires. And then I said, but the major difference is they sit in their house and make their up. I lived it. And that's the difference. I can explain things in a way that I actually have had authors, including John Gilstrap, who's a multi-best-selling author, call me and ask me stuff. Because I understand what it sounds like when bones are broken or a bullet goes through. I understand those things. So I can explain it in a way that's better than someone who hasn't been through it or lived it. And that's it. Before I forget, who here by raise of hands, who's former military? Anyone else? Well, thank you for your service to our country. I don't think we get recognized enough, and I thank you. Yes.
I'm lucky enough to acquaint my friend Leo. Thank you for that. There are three things that I just want to point out to these folks. One, you spent, I know you said this, but you spent 30 years of your life living a secret from your family, from your friends. That's incredible. Thank you for that. Thank you for being, thank you for your service to our country. Well, lastly, I hope it's okay to mention this. Leo has run several basketball tournaments through the years. This past year, he told me the story of this big guy who'd come in who was a bully. Leo hires these young kids to take tickets. 16-year-old kids, 17, whatever they are. This bully came in and wouldn't pay the kids. Said my son's playing basketball under. He does. I don't have to pay. Leo found out about this. Went and found the guy, made him pay, and then sent him down and said, "You owe that boy an apology." That's pretty remarkable. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, is there anything else anybody wants to ask? Yes.
I think one of the questions you may have covered earlier, but in writing your books, obviously, you know, I think maybe the first one might have been the hardest, and the third one maybe the easiest. But can you tell us that? And secondly, with your experiences at Black Ops, and then taking that experience to writing, did you go through formal training, or how did you?
Okay, so the first part was, the first book was the hardest. Took me the longest, even with the ghostwriter. Because I had no idea. I would just sit down with him and he'd have a computer and be taping as well, and just talk and tell him stories for hours. One of the things I have, and thank God I have this ability, and I can't really explain it, but I can take something from nothing and create a really good story using things from my experience and then create things. So I'm very lucky that way. What was the second part, Alan?
The second part was, did you go through any formal training, if you will, in terms of learning how to write?
Since I started writing, I go to these conferences, and every one of the conferences, they have other authors who, talk about and give lectures on other things. But I still haven't got to the point where I've gone to school for it. I've just gotten better and better and better at it. I'm a quick study. Even though I'm getting a little older, I'm not as quite sharp as I once was, but I learn fast, and I read a lot of all these other guys that I mentioned to you that I met, Lee Childs, John Gilson, et cetera, et cetera. What I've had to do is I've had to read at least one of their own books, because I don't have the audacity to walk up and say, will you blurb my next book? And if you said to me, so what do you think of this? And me go, oh, I didn't read it. So I actually read more books in the last few years than I did my entire life. And I've had to because of that fact. But I've also picked up different things about how they write, what they write, the way they write it, because I don't want to sound like them. I want to sound like me. So, you're welcome. Anything else? Okay. Yes.
How did you come up with the name Dan Morgan, for one thing?
How
did you come up with the name Dan Morgan for the character? And also, when you're writing, do you type? Do you dictate into a machine? Or
No.
Whatever. Handwrite?
Handwrite. That's how I do all my writing. And then after I'm done, I give it to Lynn, and Lynn will put it on the computer for me. I'm slow on the computer. I'm much faster if I just write it. And what was the other part?
Where did you get the name Dan Morgan?
I don't know. I just woke up one morning and thought, Dan Morgan. I thought he should be Irish, and I feel as though the name Dan's a strong name, and I think Morgan's. I don't know. I just woke up on. Sometimes things like that happen. I just get these, out of nowhere comes things. All the names I found out that I know of, and my editor told me this, with all the guys you saw up there, the other writers, I'm the only writer that she's ever had that named come up with the name for his own books. Most of them don't do it. They go to the editor. But I came up with Termination Orders, and those of you who read it know why. Silent Assassin, Black Skies, 12 Hours. And by the way, 12 Hours, you ever watch the show 24? 12 Hours, I wrote 12 Hours in live time, like 24. So all the action's going to take place between 7 in the morning and 7 at night, and it's going to take place in New York City. Penn Station, Grand Central Station, and the Waldorf Astoria, and it's done in live time. And me personally, I think, my thought is that that's the best book out of the four. And the reason I say that is, and nobody asked me this, but usually people ask me if I do a lot of research. Well, for my first three books, I did very little research. The research I did was updating to countries in areas that I had been in but hadn't been back to for many years. So really all I had to do was update things. But for my fourth book, 12 Hours, I actually did physical research. As a matter of fact, my friend, Dr. Jones, came with me to New York City, and we were lucky enough to make a connection. I made a connection with an FBI agent down there, but also a guy called a train master, this old-timer that works there. And this guy was unbelievable. He was very flamboyant. But, boy, was he knowledgeable. And he took us down into the bowels of Grand Central Station and showed us stuff that the general public doesn't know about, and told us things. I mean, we saw things that were amazing. I mean, just absolutely. And I was able to take those things I learned and put them in the plot line for 12 Hours. So my opinion, 12 Hours is the best. All right, I'm going to give you a sneak peek for you. I'm going to give you the opening scene of 12 Hours. So here's the premises. Day after Thanksgiving, this mother and daughter from the Boston area are going to take the train to go down to New York City. They're going to go shopping. So they get on the train in Boston, and they head out. Now this daughter, she's 11 years old, and I can't think of the word I want, she's one of these girls, she can look at you, turn away, and tell you everything about you. Your eyes, your hair, there's a name for that kind of a kid, I forget what it is. Yes. She's one of them. So they're sitting on the train, and she's sizing everybody up, and blah, blah, blah. So the train pulls in. Before the last stop before Penn Station. And she sees this guy, and she was watching him. He gets off, and he leaves his briefcase there. So as she gets off, and she's looking at it, and she thinks to herself, oh, he left his briefcase. So she tells her mother. Now they're getting close to pulling into Penn Station. As they are, the mother says, when you see the conductor, go tell the conductor. So the conductor starts coming through and telling everybody, get their belongings ready, those who are getting off at Penn, blah, blah, blah. And the little girl says, excuse me, sir, there was a man here, and she describes him to the T. She says, but he got off and he left his briefcase there. So the conductor says, well, thank you, I'll call back, and maybe he's looking for it at the other station where he got off. So they're standing there and they're talking, and the mother gets up, and they're all just right near the door. As they pull up, the little girl hands the briefcase to the conductor, and he turns around and says thanks. At that point in time, the door opens, and there's a massive explosion, and it kills everybody in the train. That's the opening scene, and that takes you in to where the three-prong attack will be, and it just gets better and better. So it's a little sneak preview. That comes out in March. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to go outside. Anybody who would like to purchase books, feel free to do so. I'll sign them for you, and thank you for coming.